Huh, well, trucks. They're still a better gamble than the lottery.
So, buying a truck was a complete clown show. Uh, I learned quite a few things that I'll do next time, or quite a few things I don't think I'll ever do again. It was a mess. I dealt with a whole bunch of different people. I made phone calls to put miles on the car. But here's the thing. If you're going to find what you want in this market, you're going to have to really start looking. A year ago, or actually a couple of years ago, this wouldn't have seemed like that big of a deal. I could have found pretty much what I wanted locally. Now, no. The whole game has changed. And I think a lot of people are starting to figure that out. A lot of people refuse to acknowledge it. And a lot of these salesmen act like, since the trucks were worth so much last year, they're still worth that because they overpaid. And they're still trying to, well, basically screw you out of a buck. So, here's what I learned. One of the things I learned is that trucks in general are still just grossly overpriced. They want way too much. Now, the prices are starting to drop, and I figure here in probably another year, the market's going to be so flooded that they're not going to be worth anything. But they're going to be flooded for all the wrong reasons. And it's something that I touched on earlier. It's that you can't get what you want. A lot of these companies now, especially PACCAR, has got it in their mind that you're going to take what we give you. People are starting to fight back. You're going to see PACCARs getting dirt cheap here soon because nobody wants them. And you're going to see the price of Internationals go way up because International is the one giving people what they want. So that'll be interesting to see. So what do I mean by the truck market's going to get flooded? Well, I'll explain. What a lot of these trucking companies are doing right now is they're figuring they can't get guys to drive manuals. But what they're starting to find out is that these manuals are costing them twice as much money. So what they're getting is just these killer warranties, and since they need trucks, they're the first users. They're getting PACCAR engines, they're getting automatic transmissions, they're putting 350, 400,000 miles on them, kicking them out the door. Well, as a second-hand user, these are things you don't want. You don't want a PACCAR that's out of warranty. You don't want an automatic transmission. You don't want an automatic transmission as a second-hand user because these clutches in these automatics, they wear out twice as fast. They do, because the slip's built right into them. They also have actuators and computers and all this other stuff. This manual right here is a shift fork. So that's kind of where people's heads at because it's cheaper to run a manual. But these companies aren't buying them. They're just buying what they can get, shoving drivers in them as fast as they can, and when they just trade them off as fast as they can. Well, the one thing I've noticed is that these truck lots are getting absolutely inundated, packed with these used trucks. They can't sell. Nobody's buying them. And what are they going to do? Well, what's going to end up happening within the next year and a half is these bigger companies are going to realize that they're not getting trade-ins for these trucks because nobody wants them. The dealers can't take them. They're full. Now, don't get me wrong. They might force these on to the dealers, but they're going to go to auctions, get disassembled, get stripped, whatever. They're not going to get sold. People are going to start losing their trade-in values, and they're going to start losing their butt on these trucks. But what I do see, a cottage industry getting ready to grow, is manual conversions. I will predict that in the next few years, probably in the next year or two, guys are going to be able to buy these trucks dirt cheap. The Cummins with the automatics. Like I said, nobody wants PACCARs. I'll explain that in a minute. And they're going to be converting these to manuals. Now, for about 10 grand, you can do it. It's actually a lot easier than you think. A lot of these 13-speed automatics are actually 13 speeds with a computer control shift actuator. The Freightliners, not so much. Those are air shift and all that, and I've heard nothing but horror stories about them. But I know they're maintenance hogs. But I see that happening. So one of the things I ran into when I was looking for Peterbilts and manuals and whatnot and Cummings was that there just aren't any. The minute they get on the lot, they're gone. These salesmen right now are going nuts. They're not selling. I ended up dealing with 5 or 6 different salesmen. 6 different salesmen, international, Kenworth, a couple different Kenworths. In fact, 3 different Kenworths and 2 different Peterbilts. Just trying to find something. Actually, 3 different Peterbilts. Just trying to find something, you know, that would fit the bill. And it was hard. I mean, it was really hard. So what do I mean by something that fits the bill? I needed a certain set of parameters for the job that I do. And you would think it's very basic to get one of these trucks set up the way you want, or find one that's set up the way you want it. But as I explained in my other videos, I also had to consider resale. Now, I know I said I didn't want a condo, and I'll explain that here in a minute. But as a second-hand user, you know that you're going to be, if you buy a truck with 400,000 or 500,000 miles on it, you're going to put 300 or 400 more thousand. You're going to get as close to $1 million, and you're going to send that truck down the road unless you completely rebuild it. Or it's something that you like, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the guy that's going to buy that truck, one, he's not going to give you nothing. And most of the time, they're just farmers looking for something that goes to elevators, and they're not going to be able to use the clearance. I know, like with this truck, I'll guarantee you that if the current trend goes, when this truck goes, I would imagine that they're probably going to cut this down into a day cab. They do. I've seen these trucks cut down into day cabs. It's funny, but there's certain places that they can cut on these. They just basically cut the whole sleeper out, leave the frame, and drop a rear hatch on it, and suddenly she's a day cab. It's a weird deal. I'm glad that thing ran. It's getting hot in here. But yeah, so suddenly they have a day cab, and I saw them do it on some old Crete trucks and stuff like that. Now, I dealt with a whole handful of salesmen, and I'm going to tell you, for the most part, about half of them were decent. The guy up in Sioux Falls at Kenworth, he was good. The one in Wichita at Kenworth, he was good. The Peterbilt dealer, I could take him or leave him down there at Rush. Rush was a joke. It was one of those deals to where every truck in the lot is sold. They don't have what you want, but they're still trying to sell you something, despite the fact you've told them 9 times. But he had me go out and look at a pack lease truck, and I remember looking at it. It was kind of what I wanted, but at the same time, I'd have to drop another 10 to 12 grand because that had a wet kit on it. Come out of the oil field. Don't buy a pack lease truck out of the oil field. Yes, all the maintenance been done, but that truck was trashed. And it's going on the used line, so they're just going to polish that turd. Anyhow, the guy at International was pretty good. I almost bought the International, and I'll tell you why I didn't. So I find this 2019 International. It's really good. I kind of touched on it a little bit. We go, I look at it. It's a little worn here and there. It's a 2019. It's been driven. About 500,000 miles on it. About average. And I'm like, you know, the price is right. the price is actually really right. It was about 65, I think. 64, 65. A little high for an International, but if this was 2-3 years ago, it would have been a $40,000 truck. So if he would have let me have it for 50, I actually wouldn't have even questioned any of this. But because the price reflects the deal, so I go and I do my due diligence. I'm thinking about the truck, and I've decided that I may just go buy this. I've already decided that it's got a Cummins, it's got a manual. It's a nice little ProStar. He tried to get me interested in some of the Lone Stars, but you know, they were almost literally $100,000 more for a Lone Star than a ProStar, and I said that's a lot of extra money to be fashionable for basically what is essentially the same truck. Yeah, the Lone Star is stretched a little bit and it has a nose on it, but it's from the cab back, it's a firewall back, it's a ProStar. And don't get me wrong, they're pretty, but I digress. So I do my due diligence. I search a history on the truck. I get this, and I come to find out, now the maintenance history was good. Nothing ever popped up on the computer. But there was this huge gap in the ownership. And we're like, why is there a huge gap? It's not in there. If it was on the dealer lot, that would say that it was in the dealer lot. Nobody can explain this huge gap. At least my guy can't. And we get looking at it, and I finally just, he's like, you know, he said, this is suspicious. The engine matched up, everything matched up and all this. And so I did a little bit of my own homework, and let me tell you what I found. So I Google the name of the company. Nothing comes up. I Google the name of the company that did the annual inspection. Nothing comes up. So I tried Googling the company it was driven to. That's a transportation company, yes, based out of Nigeria. So basically what I think this was some immigrant probably bought a truck, had a transportation company based out of Nigeria that he funneled money home with. Not a problem. I'm sure it's done a lot, you know, supporting his family trucking over here. But the ownership gap is what scared me the most. And the first thing I think of with an ownership gap, there's no repossession on it, there's none of anything else, makes me think that the truck was wrecked at one time and somebody bought it and fixed it without putting it back on the road or without reporting it to the insurance company. That happens a lot. If you've ever bought a car and checked a Carfax, same kind of deal. A lot of damage never shows up on Carfaxes. So it's the same kind of deal. Things just don't show up. So that's the first thing I get into my mind. Well, the guys I was dealing with and all that, not the dealer, the guys that were helping me do the background check and whatnot on the truck said, truthfully, he said, there's something flaky, I'd walk away. And I was like, you know, I'm going to take your advice. So I go back up there and I explained to the guy, I said, look, I said, there's a huge gap in the ownership history on this. I don't think he expected me to go that deep. And I said, he says, well, when the company was bought out by the new company, the International was bought out by another group, he said the truck ended up, for some reason, sat on the lot for 1.5 years. Timeout. Nobody lets their trucks sit on lots for years, 1.5 years. That tells me something was very messed up. I don't know if it was the paperwork. I don't know if it was something electrical. They would not elaborate. If they would elaborate and just said there was a paperwork snafu, I would have been like, that makes sense, and showed it to me. I would have wrote him a check that day. But nope. So, yeah. Nothing. So I didn't buy that truck. So while I'm down there, and I went to Kenworth and checked out a couple of trucks that I wasn't interested in buying. I call up Kenworth in Tulsa, and about, if I ever met one salesman that I really wanted to just knock out, it was that guy in Tulsa. And I've talked about this a little bit, but I'll tell you the whole story here. So I call him up, and I says, I'm looking for X, Y, and Z. He's like, I've got one. It's a flatbed truck. It's not even on the inventory list yet. It just came in. That was lie number one. So he says, I said, is it still there? He goes, yeah. He says, they're going fast. You know, he gave me the old line, and I'm like, dude, I'm in Oklahoma City. I said, I'll be there by this time. So I jump in my car, fill up with gas, get on the turnpike, and haul butt all the way to Tulsa. I mean, I was moving. Well, I get up there to Tulsa, and it's a 2017. It's a 10-speed with a 308 rear end, but it's got an ISX in it. But it just had a platinum rebuild. And I said, who did the rebuild? He said, we did. I said, okay, let's go for a drive. Well, I get in there, and the truck's just worn out. It's just 600,000 miles on it. And that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was, turns out this is a consignment. So I remember the company that he's talking about, a buddy of mine. He was going to go to work for him. I think they're out of Parsons at Kansas, I think. And they're just getting out of it. Well, they were tacking on a whole bunch of money. So, and I said, you know, this truck is trash, dude. I said, this is a $30,000 truck. Well, she originally wanted 38, and truthfully, if I'd known the lady, if I could have gotten the numbers, I would have just called her and bought the truck direct. Excuse me. But I go to the guy, and I said, well, what are you guys asking for it? He's like, well, you know, because he gave me a price of $41,000 over the phone. I was like, not bad. Yet looking at the truck, it's going to need about $10,000 to $15,000 more worth of work. And on top of that, it didn't fire up. We had to jump start it. So it turns out the truck's been sitting there for 2-3 weeks. It hasn't driven. It's a consignment. They're not wanting to put any money into it. And then he turns around and says, we're probably gonna tack on about 20. I said, you're out of your mind. He says, no. He said, but with that 20, I was like, don't even. I can fix this for 6. And we went real fast from 38 to 41 to 61. Dude, if I hadn't been in my seatbelt, I probably would have just kicked him into the door till he flew out onto I-44. But I relaxed. So I just took the truck back, parked it in the same spot, and was like, good luck, sucker. And then I drove home, and I remember sitting back thinking, I've got to figure this out, because so far I've been lied to, I've been conned. I'm finding trucks that people shouldn't be representing. It's a hard market. And I had a buddy of mine think that I was being a little overly dramatic. Well, he found out. So I was talking to a buddy of mine about this, and he said he thought I was being a little overly dramatic. He's like, no trucks. I said, I can't find a Cummins in a manual anywhere. He thought I was joking. So he starts pulling out truck magazines and this, that, and the other thing, and he calls me up the next day and says, dude, he says, I thought you were just being melodramatic. He says, I went through all these magazines. He said, there's nothing. And I was like, tried to tell you, did you not believe me? And he didn't, and a lot of people didn't. I looked at one truck that was beautiful Peterbilt, and it was 280 inches for what I do. It just won't work. Too many of the places I go to, especially down south here, you just can't get them in. especially after Homeland Security made people put fences around, so they went to the edge of the easement. So instead of having dang near all the way to the road now, we lost 4 more feet. And if you thought it was tough before, it is now. I mean, things are just getting hard. So I ended up, towards the end there, I found 3 trucks. The first truck came, it was a Cummins manual, beautiful. It was that pewter gray, it was that dark gunmetal, pewter, whatever. Gorgeous. Came available on a Friday. I was gonna go up and look at it. I already knew it was a good truck, and it was sold Saturday. So I got thinking, you know, I called up the company and I said, basically, if I don't find a truck in 10 days, I said, I'm coming back to work as a company driver. I said, I've got to go back to work. I said, the time off's been nice. I said, but the truck market is crap. I said, I'm just going to put the money in savings and just go be a company driver for a while and see what happens. Well, in the meantime, I run across a 579 and everything checks out. So everything checks out on this 579 and I really like it. It's down at Heartland. They got a lot of neat trucks down there. But out of the 150 trucks they had in there, there was 3 manuals with Cummins. And one of them was a Detroit with a manual. Actually, there was just 3 manuals. There was 2 Cummins and 1 Detroit. They had a 4th, but it was on consignment. It wasn't on consignment. It was under contract already. So I looked at a 2020 and a 2019, and I decided on the 2019. And then I call up the company, and they're like, you know, we just had this one come open. They said we weren't expecting it, but it did. I got the VIN number, the parameters, all that. And this thing checked out real nice. And I know this company. I've been working for them for 5 years. And I realized, you know, if I have to make one concession, and that's the condo, I said, I'm willing to make that concession. Because I need a truck. I need to get back to work. And this is at a price point that makes sense to me. So the price point worked out well for me. It was just one of those deals to where I needed a truck, I needed to get back to work, and I realized that this will be my 3rd truck, and I'll probably have a 4th one. So I ended up just doing my due diligence on this. I went and I did all the paperwork and all that, talked to them, and it all worked out. So basically what I learned was you just got to stay with it. It's rough. This is probably one of the rougher things I've done in a while. You know, you're dealing with basically used car salesmen, you're dealing with shysters, you're dealing with just all sorts of people like that. And I was glad that my buddy bought the truck, my old truck. The money was right and all that, and so that really helped out too. And you know, people often think that when, you know, you get ready to buy a new truck, you can just put this in Truck Paper or Marketplace and people are just going to give you what you want. No, they're not. Used truck dealers are going to screw you. They're really going to screw you. And the guys that you're just going to get more tire kickers than anything, unless you send it to auction, and then you're just going to get what you get, which probably will be roughly the same amount what the dealers will give you. So when the opportunity came to sell it, I didn't even hesitate. I just sold it and then decided to deal with it, which was the right and the wrong way to do things. Usually you need to have something in mind when you go to sell, but at the same time, when the money comes, you need to realize that this is probably the best deal you're going to get. And you just got to take it. So dealing with salesmen, you kind of got to treat them like children. Don't let them know what you know. Don't let them know anything about you. Always give them an email. Don't give them your phone number if you don't have to. It's just, this is business, pure and simple, and they need to be professional. If you're dealing with a salesman that isn't professional, you've got to get out of there. The part that sucks was you have to take him at face value because you don't have a choice. It's either good or it's not, but you have to do your due diligence. And like I've said before, if you're willing to drop $100,000 on a truck, but you're not willing to drop $100 in gas to go look at it, you're setting yourself up for failure. I did over 3,000 miles looking at trucks, and in reality I didn't go that many places. You know, I went to hubs that had dealers in outlying areas. So like the Midwest Peterbilt Group, I could check their whole inventory and buy it from a particular dealer. Sioux Falls Truck and Trailer, we deal with them, with the company, so I had a good relationship with that guy because I was up there a lot. MHC, they got, now MHC was kind of dysfunctional. They didn't want to share info, they didn't want you, so if you agree to work a deal through a particular dealer, no matter where it's at, you'll have a better experience, because that was probably some of the most dysfunctional people I've ever met in my life. Rush was just a disappointing joke. I don't know why. They just, you would think with this many dealerships all over and this many salesmen and this many, it was just like a dysfunctional family at Thanksgiving. Nobody knew anything. Nobody would, you know, look at inventory anywhere else. And they're like, oh, we don't have access to it. I'm like, oh, horse crap. So they were hard to deal with, and it was all smoke and mirrors with them. It was all flash, you know. So it was a real hard deal dealing with them. And truth be told, the international dealer down there in Oklahoma City there at Holt, probably one of the nicest guys I've ever met. Really nice, really straightforward. Really good guy, you know, and he was straight up. But, you know, I wouldn't mind doing business with him again. So, you just have to play the game, and the game's not fun, guys. So, when you go out to look for a truck, be ready for the game, and be ready to take 3 or 4 weeks off. And be ready to travel. I mean, you're going to have to sit there and start building relationships, you know, from day one. And, you know, it's not a bad thing, but you've got to realize that you've got a hard road ahead, and stay the course, because I'll tell you right now, if you start getting impulsive, you're going to buy something you're not going to like. I like this truck, don't love it, but it's going to get me to the next thing, because in reality, if I look past the personal preferences, it is a really good truck. So just sometimes you got to look a little bit beyond yourself and figure out what you're doing, because truck shopping is not like it was 3 or 4 years ago. It's not even like it was last year. The market's getting ready to crash, but the trucks that you really want, people aren't selling. They're holding on to them, and when these trucks go on the market, they go quick. When I go to sell this one here in a couple of years, I'm going to get my money back out of it. Mark my words. So, this is what everybody wants. They want this setup, and they can't find it. And they're paying premiums for it. So, just something to think about. So, I appreciate it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next video.